This one happened to our friend Slapped Ham. Some kids were whispering and saying things in his class, and one of them says, very loudly, that the answers are on the back page of the test. To which the teacher is surprised. He instantly begins going around tearing the back page off their tests. When asked how the kid knew the answers were on the back of the test, he said, "Just look, a whole page of answers there. I thought they were part of the test." The teacher didn't make them retake the class or anything, so needless to say, everyone passed. As for how this happened, the teacher explained the next day. Apparently the Word document form on the test at the school all contain a copy of the answer key on the back of them. Since the printer staples the test together on its own without human input, it's the teacher's responsibility to not print the last page. Because that system makes sense. But the teacher didn't care that much. He even helped Slapped Ham with test answers he was stuck on. Great guy.
Once in 4th grade, Emoji got a detention for stepping on an ant that had bitten him twice. He tried to show his teacher the bites, but she didn't listen to him and said that ants have feelings too. She wasn't very nice, so Emoji couldn't reason with her. He had to spend 2 lunch times in detention. Well, one for each ant, I guess. The other teacher he did the detention with said that Emoji must have done more than just kill an ant. He showed the teacher the 2 bites and she let him out early and said, "This'll be our little secret." So Emoji only had to do half a lunch detention. So it's 2 weeks of detention for double ant homicide, but only half a day detention for ant slaughter. I would have taken that to ant court, although the judges can be a little bit biased.
When Slapped Ham was a kid, his uncle was sent to jail. Being a curious kid, he asked his mum why he went there. She said it was because he was smoking weed. Since he was a kid, he thought that weed was the same as the weeds that grow in your yard. A few weeks later, he saw a guy chewing on a dry weed on his way home, so he ran home as fast as he could and told his mum. This made her burst into laughter, and then she called almost everyone she knew and told them while he was freaking out about the guy. Then, when she was done calling people, she told him the difference between weeds and weed. He felt real stupid and still gets teased about it to this day.
Emoji had just finished watching an anime marathon and was getting ready to go to bed. It was a stormy, rainy night, and lightning flashed in the sky. As he brushed his teeth, he looked out his window to find a white Labrador fast asleep at the base of a tree. He went outside to call out to it, but when he looked out, he saw nothing. So, he scurried back upstairs to continue with his bedroom routine. He looked out the window again, and there was the dog, sleeping. The creepy thing is, the next morning on the news, a white Labrador had been found slaughtered in the backyard of a house nearby. And so for the next few nights, the ghost of the dog continued to reappear, sleeping peacefully next to the tree stump.
Nixium's girlfriend handcuffed him to the bed, and to look all attractive, she threw the keys behind her. They forgot all about it and did the deed, but afterwards, to her horror, she just couldn't find the keys. After 3 hours of Nixium's wrists getting uncomfortable and her spoon feeding him scrambled eggs, it was only after her roommate came home to see them did she find the keys in her pet snake's cage.
There was one teacher that Dolan had who did a lot of amazing things for his students, but one time in particular, he saw that all of his game designer students were feeling under the weather, so he had the class pass around several USBs. All of these contained Unreal Tournament 3, and after every computer was finished downloading the game, Dolan and his classmates spent the rest of the class laughing and playfully shouting at each other while playing together. After that day, every time the class's morale was low, Dolan's teacher would triumphantly stand up and say, "You all have 5 minutes to finish working and save your progress. We're playing video games today." Sadly, due to how strict and old-fashioned the high school was, he ended up quitting. Dolan's teacher treated his students as actual people with actual lives outside of school, and he had a massive success rate for his classes.
Ursa had an awkward moment in the car with her mom that would have been way worse if anybody else was around. When Ursa was about 16, she was driving her mom to the store when her mom looked over at her from the passenger side and said, "Honey, I just hope you know the pull-out method doesn't work, and that's why we have you." It was so completely out of nowhere, Ursa almost swerved into a ditch.
When Nixium was in the last year of middle school, he really wanted to get this cute girl in his class to go out with him, so he asked his best friend to find out what she liked. He found out she really liked music, so one day Nixium started to lie that he could play guitar. Every time he saw her, the lie would get bigger and bigger, until he convinced her he was a guitar master. Nixium knew he wouldn't be able to get away with it forever, so he asked his mum to buy him a guitar so he could secretly practice. He started carrying his guitar around with him everywhere. For weeks his crush asked him to play her a song, but Nixium always made excuses to get out of it. Eventually she realized he was full of crap and dumped him. Nixium was mad about losing her, so he started practicing guitar every day to prove her wrong. He now plays in a successful death metal band, so at least some good came out of his lie.
When M. Kyle M. was 11, him and his family went to Gettysburg for a reenactment of the Civil War. Now, since it was a reenactment, they had to sleep in tents. During the night, he had to use the restroom, and when he was done, he started to walk back to his tent. It was really quiet and dark, so M. Kyle M., well, he ran to the campground. But then he stopped to see a man in a Civil War jacket with a bloody face. M. Kyle M. was so scared, he couldn't move. The man started walking towards him, so he started to run, but when M. Kyle M. blinked, the man was right in front of him. He was so scared, he couldn't move, and he couldn't breathe. And then the man said in a scary voice, "You shouldn't have come here." M. Kyle M. screamed so loud that the whole campground woke up. His mom ran to see what was wrong. When she asked him what was wrong, he answered,
"The man in the Civil War jacket said we shouldn't have come here."
That's when the whole campground flew off the handle.
Civil Spider is a computer programmer with a very demanding boss. One morning, his boss told him to drop everything he was doing and go pick up his family from the airport. He said he couldn't go himself because he was needed back in the office. Civil Spider suggested getting them a taxi, but his boss laughed in his face. So, Civil Spider drove all the way to the airport in the tiny computer repair van. The shitty thing was, he only gave Civil Spider 20 minutes notice to do this, but the airport was a whole hour away. Civil Spider drove as fast as he could because his boss said there'd be consequences if his family had to wait too long.
When Melissa was in high school, she was walking to class when she heard loud dance music coming from the gymnasium. She and a few of her friends decided to investigate what was going on. They snuck into the doorway, only to find one of their teachers wearing an inflatable sumo suit. The teacher was dancing furiously to the music, all alone in the gym. Melissa and her friends tried to contain their laughter, but they ended up having to run out of the room so that the teacher didn't see them. Every time she had classes with that teacher after that, she just couldn't look at them the same way. The dumbest thing Spincess ever did for money was when her friends gave her a latex fursuit that looked like a husky. They said they would give her $1,000 if she put it on and wore it around town. Spincess thought it would be funny, so she did it. The tail inflated, so it was hard to sit down. One guy even squeezed her boob and said, "Hey there, little pup." She ended up hiding in her friend's car while they put together most of the money, and she still has the suit.
Spinal Palm was at Comic-Con one time when he saw something weird. There was a drunk man dressed as Green Lantern who began acting like a chicken by pecking people and squawking. When he saw security guards approaching, he made a run for it before stripping naked. He then ran around and began to grind against all the girls. Eventually, security was able to grab him and take him away. As they dragged him towards the exit, the man kept kicking and screaming. When Andymation was 12, she was hanging out with her buddy Honeybits by an open fire. Andymation's 4-year-old brother wandered outside to join them and sat with Honeybits, giving her a big hug when he suddenly closed his eyes and whispered into her ear, "If you close your eyes, he can't see you." Nobody knows who he was talking about.
I remember one time I was riding in the car with my mother, her friend, and her friend's baby. We were driving along, and my mother decided to put on some John Denver music for us to listen to. While the music was playing, specifically the song Annie's Song, the baby decided he wanted to sing along to it. so he started making these goo goo gaga sounds in rhythm to the song. Even after we all started laughing, he still kept on going. Oh, John Denver, touching the souls of the young and the old alike.
One night, Doopy was lying in bed messaging a guy called Dave. They flirted for a while, and then Dave asked Doopy if she'd send him some nudes. Doopy was a bit of an exhibitionist, so she agreed to send him a shot of her lady parts. Before she could talk herself out of it, she fired up WhatsApp, found Dave's name in the contact list, and sent him the pic. But that's when Doopy realized she had 2 Daves in her contacts. One of them was a co-worker, and sure enough, Doopy sent it to the wrong one. Her next shift with co-worker Dave was, well, awkward.
When Sweet Commando was about 14 years old, he and his brother would go to Walmart, and they would look for any loose Legos on the ground. He honestly thought that if he found something on the floor out of the box, it was free to take. They were there for about half an hour when a couple of people noticed them looking under the shelves. They came over to Sweet Commando and asked, "What are you guys up to?" He answered honestly that he was looking for dropped items. What he didn't notice, though, was that one of those people was the manager at the store. He told Sweet Commando to give back the Legos they found so that he could take them to management. He then proceeded to lecture them on why you can't take things just because they aren't in the box. Sweet Commando was embarrassed that he was stealing without realizing it, but also a little upset that he didn't get to keep all the Legos. After that, he never took something again without paying for it. When Gergak was in 7th grade, he was crazy in love with the girl who sat behind him in class. He desperately wanted to ask her out, but he didn't know how or what to say. He decided to ask his older brother, who seemed to be really good with the ladies. Unfortunately, Gergak was so desperate that he forgot that his brother was an asshole who was always pranking him. He told Gergak that the best way to get a girl to like you is to compliment her breasts. So the next day, Gergak marched up to her after class and said, "Hey, your boobs make you look really sexy." All this got him was a slap in the face. But after a while, he apologized and explained that his stupid brother had given him bad advice. And now they're dating. So I guess being an awkward sleaze can work sometimes. The strangest thing that Tallop saw at a convention happened right around when he was leaving. Tallop was tired, and he was hot and sweaty from the sweater he was wearing for his Cancree cosplay, and he just wanted to get to the car. As he was passing a window, though, he saw it. Across the street, on a neighboring building, there was Spider-Man actually climbing down from the roof. He walked around on a dangerous-looking building ledge like it was nothing, and then he climbed back up to the roof, and he disappeared. Tallop still regrets not getting it on camera.
Pandora's boyfriend began flirting with her, and she needed to reply with something, so she said, "You're as pretty as a flower." He just stared back at her with a blank look, clearly trying to process what had just been said. He said something beautiful in return, so Pandora blurted out, "I can't wait until you meet my mom." He ran away and slammed the door behind him. One time, Pandora went to a restaurant with her family. Most of Pandora's family was obese, and she'd recently lost her grandpa to type 2 diabetes, so they were all a bit sad. After finishing a huge meal, Pandora stuck out her gut and said,
"Hey Mom, you're gonna be your grandma to some chocolate cake."
It seemed funny in Pandora's head, but no one at the table was in a laughing mood. They looked at Pandora as if she just made the most disgusting joke ever, and Pandora had to practically trip over herself apologizing.
When I was younger, I remember there was a kid who lived near my house named Drew. Now, Drew and me used to be friends a long time ago, but we had a falling out, and well, because he was one of the more popular kids at school and on the bus, he had a lot of friends and buddies ready to back him up. So one day, while riding home on the bus, Drew decided to start teasing me. He threw paper balls at me, and he called me names, and many other kids joined in. I probably had around 9 or 10 people mocking me, throwing stuff at me, saying that I wasn't handsome. Yeah, right. And so forth. So you know what I did? I sat there and I waited patiently. Because you see, only Drew and I got off at our bus stop, so I knew I'd get my revenge soon. So eventually, we get to our neighborhood, and we both stepped off of the bus. Immediately, I grabbed Drew and I threw him to the ground and proceeded to beat the tar out of him. I even took his head and I repeatedly smashed it into a large oak tree multiple times until our bus driver freaked out, stopped the bus, ran over to us, and stopped the fight. By that point, Drew's entire face was covered in blood and he was crying his eyes out. I will say this, Drew never made fun of me again, and all those people on the bus that watched this happen, they didn't make fun of me either.
One time, Sid dated a girl who began to turn on him. It got to the point where she completely changed and he broke up with her. One day, she broke into his house and threatened him with a knife, saying, "If you don't have sex with me, I will chop your nipples off." Sid pushed her out the front door and locked it. The next day, he saw her at school with some of her friends. Sid's ex-girlfriend asked, while grabbing his collar and giving him a creepy smile, "Want these babies?" Then his ex and her friends flashed him. He still has nightmares to this day. So, as some of you may know already, my grandmother's house is extremely haunted. I made a video about it on my own channel, so instead of talking about that, which you can honestly go to my channel and listen to it, I'm going to tell you guys something very exclusive that is not on my channel that happened to my family that has nothing to do with my grandmother's house. So we moved into this 2-story house, which is really weird because we normally couldn't afford such a luxury. It was a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood, and it was honestly too good to be true. So one of the first thing I asked my parents was, "Do you think this place is haunted?" They obviously said no. I mean, why should they believe that? They just got a fucking amazing deal on this beautiful house, you know? Why doubt it? They were terribly wrong. During the night, we would hear clashes of plates and silverware and the cabinets in the kitchen, which was really weird. And we had these L-shaped stairs that whenever we would go up them, we wouldn't want to turn the corner without turning the light on because we were all very scared that we would see something at the top. And one thing about that house that scared us so much is that sometimes we would hear people whispering our names. I remember one time in specific, I was sleeping on the couch in the living room because I just discovered anime and I was gonna fucking watch it all night in the living room. And I woke up in the middle of the night hearing my sister call my name, whispering my name in my ear. And I opened my eyes and looked and there was nothing there, which freaked me out, so I just kind of covered my face with a blanket and hoped it went away until I fell asleep again. Yeah, stuff like that happened a lot, and we never really talked about it until after we moved. And that house, 10 years later today, is still up for sale. They can't keep anybody in it, so I don't think we're the only ones.
One day when she was in college, Froggy was eating her lunch while talking to a friend of hers, Mimi, about a project. Suddenly, Froggy noticed 3 guys cussing at each other. Turned out that they were fighting over the last slice of pizza from Little Caesars. One guy pinned another and the pizza fell onto the floor. The guy who had pinned the other picked up the slice of pizza and ate it despite it being on the dirty, grimy floor. Mimi looked at Froggy and asked if that guy seriously ate something that fell on the floor, and Froggy nodded.
It was 3 in the morning, and Emoji was feeling kind of frisky. Everyone in his house was asleep, so he got out all of the supplies. His laptop, headphones, tissues, and the all-important lotion. He was just about to start when he heard a door opening right outside his room. Emoji freaked the fuck out, and he threw his laptop across the room as a reflex. It smashed against the wall, and it made a huge noise. Emoji panicked. Thinking quickly, he hid his headphones, threw his box of tissues in the trash, and stuffed the lotion into his closet, making even more noise. His mom burst into the room just as Emoji was pulling up his underwear under the covers. She screamed,
"What happened?"
and Emoji shouted,
I had a nightmare."
His mom grabbed the broken laptop, looked at it suspiciously, and said,
More like a panic attack.
she totally knew what was up.
What's the weirdest things ever happened to me at work? So when I was a little bit younger, I helped my dad out when he was rearing some greyhounds for the greyhound races. And so one time, my job was to hold onto this greyhound and stop him from escaping because we were outside the main gate of this rearing place. And so I just had to grab the greyhound around the neck with both my arms. Now, bear in mind, greyhounds, if you guys don't know, they're very, very bulky, well-built dogs. They're almost pure muscle, that's why they do the races. They're like little horses. So they're fucking strong. And so, as I was holding this thing, it started kind of writhing around and, trying to get loose. And, I kept getting told, like, don't let him go. If you let him go, he's gonna fucking run off. These things are fast as shit. And you'll never see it again. And so, every muscle in my body was dedicated to holding this dog. It started flipping out. And so I was rolling on the ground. I was getting scratched to hell. Like, it was starting to tear my face off. And I was scared. I was like, oh, this dog's gonna get out and, like, it's just gonna go missing. It's gonna be my fault. And so I was having a wrestling match with this dog, which was absurdly strong. And so by the end, I'd been holding on to it for about 10 minutes and I was just exhausted. I was beaten. And then it managed to get out of my grip. And you know what it did instead of running away? It just walked over to the gate. Just kind of stood there, just waiting. I was like, what? Why the fuck was I holding it then? What? I nearly risked my life. And the dog just kind of stands there and it's just like, And then the gate opened, it walked in. I was like, well, fuck me then. What was the point of all that? I was covered in dirt, bruises, I was bleeding, and then I look over this dog and it's totally fine. I'm like, yeah, thanks.
Andy Mations was walking home alone because she takes a walk every Sunday. Well, as soon as she left, her husband had said, wait, you can't go outside. There's a murder. But she had closed the door. Halfway through the walk, she heard a man whisper from a few feet behind her, knife or axe. Andy Mations turned around and she saw a man on the other side of the street. He was pretty normal looking until he mouthed the word run. That's when Andy Mations looked at his chest. He had been stabbed. The whole experience didn't seem real. She thought it was a dream. But then she ran home, and her husband kept her inside for the rest of the week. The man responsible for the stabbing was arrested, and Andy Mations doesn't know if the man who was stabbed survived or not. But she does know that she was almost murdered.
Pringle worked at a McDonald's when he was much younger. While working the front counter one day, a couple came up to order. The guy said, "I'll have 2 McDoubles," then casually turned to the girl, pulled out a ring box, and said, "Will you marry me?" Pringle was in total shock as he finished taking their order, and for some reason he couldn't understand, she said yes. Proposing to your girl while in the line at McDonald's, that's really setting a standard for your marriage.
One day, Pandora woke up and went to the bathroom to get ready for the day. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw that her red lipstick was smeared all over her face. Confused, Pandora washed it off and grabbed a towel. She solved the mystery when she saw "fuck you" written on the towel in her lipstick. It turned out that her crazy ex-boyfriend had snuck into her house the night before while she slept. After that, Pandora moved away. Once, Snoopy was babysitting a 6-year-old who was really into superheroes and wished that he could fly. The kid kept asking if he had superpowers, and Snoopy told him to believe and stay determined, the usual little lessons we try to instill in children. Now that the kid thought he could fly, he snuck up to the 2nd floor while Snoopy was getting a drink and tried to jump off of the roof. He ended up crashing into a tree and was stuck there until the fire department came and got him down. Luckily for her, the kid escaped with only minor cuts and bruises.
Tolop and his 2 friends, Legna and Salty Squid, went to a school library one day. The library had about 50 couches and could easily fit 3 average-sized people. Suddenly, Legna jumped on the part of the couch with the armrest. That made Salty Squid, who also wanted the part with the armrest, go absolutely ballistic. They grabbed each other and started throwing punches, then whipped each other with their charger cords. The librarian came over, but Legna screamed, "Ree!" They didn't seem to realize that the couch had 2 armrests.
When M. Kyle M. went on holiday once, he found himself getting quite drunk, and he wandered out alone into a desert. He remembers having a great time exploring, and the rest of the night was a blur. The next morning he woke up with extreme pain in his penis, and no pants on. It was one of his finer moments in life when he realized that the night before, he had literally tried to have sex with a cactus. He spent the rest of the day quietly picking needles out from his needle in the bathroom. That's my fetish.